You're listening to Inside Israel Today with Gil Hoffman on the Land of Israel Network.
Hello and welcome to Inside Israel Today here on the Land of Israel Network on thelandofisrael.com. In a week of very fun political crises, I love my job writing for the Jerusalem Post and telling people around the world what's going on behind the scenes in Israeli politics. People could feel embarrassed by Israeli politics. People could feel that it's dirty, that it's corrupt, that it's nasty. I think it's wonderful. I think that nothing sells Israel better than the democracy that we have, that people around the world can relate to, the vibrancy of the public opinion here in Israel, the fact that all the politicians deeply care about Israel's future. They all just have very different opinions on how they see it. I don't have bias toward one politician or another. They all think that they, and only they, have all the answers, and that's the beauty of living in a democracy and a Jewish state at the same time. Democracy where everyone's voice matters, and a Jewish state where everyone has so much of a voice and never shuts up. That is the beauty of Israel, and we can be so proud of living here in this Jewish state, in this democracy. And I think the events of this past week prove it as much as at any time before. So, first of all, I've been covering a crisis that we had here about train work done on Shabbat, work done on our national railways to fix them and make them better, which is very nice that we want our trains to run better. They're currently working on building a train line from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem that will get us from the two largest cities, between the two largest cities in Israel, in 28 minutes, which, please God, would be a wonderful thing. Our transportation minister, Yisrael Katz, has said that when the train is ready, that he will make sure it will be free on the three pilgrimage festivals of Passover, Sukkot, and Shavuot, so it can be part of a biblical prophecy coming true. To facilitate people being ole regel, of making a pilgrimage visit during those three holidays. Something tells me, though, that the train authority will not let him not charge money, but we'll see. Amid all this controversy, I think the most interesting statement that I heard was from one of the ultra-Orthodox members of Knesset, Yisrael Eichler, when he was being interviewed by one of the top anchors in Israel. At one point he stopped and he asked the anchor a question. He said, "We have this dispute that we ultra-Orthodox think that the repairs should not be done on Shabbat. And you, anchor, think it should be done only on Shabbat because the rest of the week people commute on these trains and you don't want their commute to be harmed, and I don't want the Shabbat to be harmed." Well, think about it. In other countries around the world, they don't celebrate Shabbat. And they have trains. When do they repair their trains? Their trains work 7 days a week. And I had never thought about that. I haven't lived in America in a long time. I never lived in New York, thank God. I've lived in much more civil places, in Chicago, in Florida, in Arizona. In Chicago, there are people who commute and everything, but it's not like the culture of everyone like it is in New York. And so it was never really a part of my life. But yeah, they did train repairs when they needed to do train repairs. They just did it. And yeah, it inconvenienced people, and people fetched about it and everything. And then the train worked better. The train line in Chicago is not exactly something to be proud of, but it is what it is. And so here, yes, we can wait a little bit. We can find some kind of compromise that the most urgent things that could be considered life-saving can be done on Shabbat, and things that are not deemed life-saving in any way can be done as fast as possible. And it's great that they're building trains all over this country. That is the key to the future of the Israeli economy. For many years, we built factories in the north and the south, where poorer sectors lived, to employ those people. Those factories were not economically viable. They're now in China. Instead, the wise people who run this country realized the jobs are in the center of the country. They're not going anywhere. Those are the factories and the other places of employment, the businesses that are successful. The people are going to have to come there. And so they built high-speed roads and trains throughout the country to bring the people into the center of the country where the jobs were. And you know what? That has proven very successful. We have the lowest unemployment rate out of any Western nation. Now, that would be very impressive were it not a lie. The reason why it's a lie is because unemployment rates in Israel and anywhere around the world do not include those who are not seeking work. Well, it happens to be that 10% of our population in Israel is ultra-Orthodox. Half of the people who are ultra-Orthodox are men. And half of the people who are ultra-Orthodox men do not work. The other half do, which is very impressive that they got up to 51% of employment of ultra-Orthodox men. But you're talking about if the country is 10% ultra-Orthodox, 5% ultra-Orthodox men, 2.5% ultra-Orthodox unemployed men, add those to the under 5% unemployment rate we have, and it is not as impressive. But again, unemployment rates do not include people who are not seeking work in any country. Now, that brings us to this relationship between the ultra-Orthodox and the rest of the country, because Israelis are just getting more and more fed up with them. And it's happened because of power plays and going to an extreme. The most fringe element among the ultra-Orthodox do not recognize the institutions of the state. And so they have been holding protests around the country where they shut down traffic. And people think these people are representative of the ultra-Orthodox, which is not true. They are very much a fringe among them. These are people who don't vote. They're not voters of the ultra-Orthodox party that was in the news this week. There are people who don't vote at all because they don't recognize Israel really even existing. The protests, people reported incorrectly, they're not about people that don't want to serve in the army. They're already not serving in the army. These are people who don't want to go to the induction center to receive the piece of paper that says they don't have to serve in the army because they don't want to recognize the existence of that induction center. That is what the protests are about. And I can understand if you get into a traffic jam that lasts 6 hours because people are dancing and smoking in front of you, which, by the way, smoking, not allowed by the Torah, that really, I can understand why it would make you resentful. And if they wear black hats and other less fringe people wear black hats, you might characterize them as all the same, even though there are so many nuances among them. The decision made by Yaakov Litzman, the head of the United Torah Judaism Party, to quit Netanyahu's government over Shabbat work done on the trains is explainable. And he wants to defend the Shabbat. He wants to show that his voters, that he puts the Shabbat first. And his rabbi told him to do it, and he respects the decisions of his rabbi, the Ger Rebbe, who is a wonderful Torah scholar, and we should all show a lot of respect to. I cannot judge either the Ger Rebbe or Yaakov Litzman on their Torah scholarship. I can on their politics, though. And I gotta think, you would accomplish more for your constituents, your ultra-Orthodox people who vote for you, by staying part of the government. People who are part of the government, ministers, they have a lot of influence. There are decisions being made over the next few months about whether stores should be open outside Tel Aviv, about drafting yeshiva students. There's a lot going on, and if you're not there in the cabinet, you have no influence at all. And so I'm a little bit, as a political analyst, a little disappointed in the decision of Yaakov Litzman. Tonight, I was working in the hallway in the Knesset, and I saw a lot of people going into Litzman's room. So I waited out there and continued working on the nice cushy black chair that there is outside his office as other members of parliament from Shas, the Sephardi ultra-Orthodox party, and United Torah Judaism, the Ashkenazi ultra-Orthodox party, were going in and out of Litzman's office. And then when the meeting ended and Litzman came out, I came up to him and I said, "What have you decided in that meeting?" And he looks at me and he says, "Do tshuva. Repent." Now, I don't think he's read anything I've written. I mean, he knows that I'm a journalist, but he probably knows that I write for the Jerusalem Post because I've been around for so long. But so he knows who I am, but he's not telling me to repent for anything I did. He's just telling me in general to repent, which is true. We all should repent. He just didn't want to speak about whatever they decided behind closed doors, and that's cool. So he told me to repent. And so then I looked in back of me, and I saw other members of Knesset who were at that same meeting. And what did they tell me? Come in. We need a minyan. We need 10 men inside to pray the evening service. And so I did, and I think I really accomplished what Yaakov Litzman told me to do. I repented. I went and, I very often say the evening service after midnight. It's probably not the best time to say it. I'm kind of half asleep at the time, but that's when I'm done and I have a clear head enough to be able to pray. But there I went and I prayed at 6 o'clock, like a good Jew. And so I think I repented. And so then I asked Gafni, the other head of the United Torah Judaism, I said to him, Litzman told me to repent. I've prayed with you. I think that counts. What happened in the meeting? And he said, I don't know. I didn't really pay attention. Okay. So there's one more party leader in there, Derry. And I said, what did you talk about? And he said, what do you want to know? And I said, well, I want to know about the Shabbat crisis. Did you decide anything new? And he says, we're way past Shabbat. We're already on Havdalah, which is the prayer that you say after the end of the Sabbath. So at least I got that line, but he didn't tell me anything either. That's what it's like covering politics here sometimes. It is what it is. And so this has been temporarily put off, this scandal, this crisis. We've got another weekend coming up. There'll be apparently a little bit less train work being done in Shabbat. And this week no one will complain, and hopefully we'll forget about the trains for a little bit, and everybody will get along. And people who respect the Sabbath will continue to respect the Sabbath. People who don't will continue not to. And just to put this all into perspective, we have in Israel public broadcasting. Until a year ago, that public broadcasting was run by the Israel Broadcasting Authority. The Israel Broadcasting Authority was owned entirely by the State of Israel. It was funded by taxpayer money. And the Israel Broadcasting Authority has run its radio station, Kol Yisrael, since before Israel was founded. Every single Shabbat. Its television station has run since the late 60s. Every single Shabbat. And I don't see anybody leaving the government over that. And you can't hide it. They're not hiding the radio station. It's not like the railways where they're kind of underground. You can pretend you didn't see it. Didn't really find out about it. You can't pretend that Channel 1 did not air the entire time for those 25 hours. In fact, they run on holidays too. They run on Rosh Hashanah. It's a pretty big holiday. They don't run on Yom Kippur. That's the beauty here in Israel. We honor the Sabbath, though life goes on, and the television station, the radio station do work on the Sabbath. But Yom Kippur, no one would even consider having a television and radio station run on Yom Kippur. We are that special a country. And so I will be very proud of being a Jewish state. We'll be very proud of being a democracy. And those things clash sometimes together when they're put together, and sometimes they also work beautifully. And that's part of the beauty of the land of Israel, the state of Israel, the people of Israel, and yes, the government and the politics of Israel. Stay tuned after the break. We'll talk about more excitement inside Israel today.
Hi, this is Eve Harrow, host of Rejuvenation on the Land of Israel Network. You can hear a new show from me every Sunday, and every day of the week, shows from another one of my very talented fellow show hosts. Reach me, Eve, at thelandofisrael.com, and keep listening, everybody. We love your feedback. The Land of Israel, coming at you every day, every week. That's the Land of Israel Network on thelandofisrael.com.
And we're back here on Inside Israel Today on the Land of Israel Network. We're talking about the exciting week that there was in Israeli politics, and so in the first half of the show, I spoke about the tension between the ultra-Orthodox and the rest of the population. Now we'll be speaking about the tension between the people of Israel and the Jewish world. Yes, the people of Israel and the Jewish world. We love both. We love the people who live here. We love the people who don't live here. And we try to get along, but it's been a tough time recently because there have been times that the government of Israel, sometimes even the people of Israel, don't agree with the Jews around the world. There have been controversies over a plan to have an entrance into an egalitarian prayer area near the Western Wall, an entrance from the Western Wall into that egalitarian prayer area, about whether there should be Reform and conservative rabbis recognized by the state to administer that egalitarian prayer space. There have been disagreements about how to handle conversion, which right now is run by the ultra-Orthodox, who completely control our chief rabbinate. Why do they control our chief rabbinate? Because they won an election. And the modern Orthodox religious Zionists lost that election and handled that election poorly. The current and previous leaders of the modern Orthodox religious Zionists in Israel, Naftali Bennett and Zvulun Orlev, both screwed up elections for the chief rabbinate. And so the ultra-Orthodox have become more and more powerful because of that. Now, that has increased tension with the diaspora, where the overwhelming majority of the people are not Orthodox, certainly not ultra-Orthodox, and they would like there to be egalitarian prayer at the Western Wall. They would like the conservative and reform movements to be officially funded by the Religious Affairs Ministry in Israel. And they would like Israeli politicians to not say insulting things about Jews around the world. Now, I'm not going to go too far into what our Deputy Foreign Minister, Tzipi Chotovely, said. She did speak about how Israelis are conscripted into the army, whereas in America it's not part of their psyche to serve in defending their homeland. She kind of skewed that into insulting them for not doing enough serving, to the point that a Nazi website said, see, look, the Deputy Foreign Minister of Israel said Jews don't serve in the army enough. That's not actually true. There have been plenty of American Jews who fought very valiantly in every war that America has had. But it is true to say that they are not conscripted, all of them, the way in Israel they at least theoretically are. She also put down the reform and conservative movements in general and talked about them being empty, which is certainly not true. They are vibrant and worship God in their own kind of way. But Tzipi Chotovely has spent time in the United States. She was there as an emissary of Bnei Akiva, of the religious Zionist youth movement, at the age of 19 in Atlanta. And while she worked for an Orthodox movement, I would like to think that she should have gotten a chance to go to a Reform synagogue and see how beautiful their services are. But so that caused some controversy this week, and this is a time where you need to have Jewish leadership in order to repair those relations between Israel and the Jewish world. And we don't necessarily have that right now. Netanyahu does not want to get involved in these controversial issues. Netanyahu wants to focus on what he cares about, which is matters of diplomacy and security. That's what he's good at. And the economy, by the way. You know, he bragged today. He bragged in the Likud faction meeting that the economy has never been better, which is arguably true. The diplomacy for Israel has never been better, which we can make a very strong argument is true. The security situation for Israel has never been better, which the chief of staff, the IDF, also says. So he didn't say the relations between Israel and the diaspora have never been better. And you know what? He doesn't really care. He doesn't bring it up. It's not his thing. Yes, he theoretically spends a lot of time with American Jews, has built up a relationship with them for many years, especially the wealthy ones who can support him politically, financially. But it still doesn't mean that he cares about the subject. It's not his thing and never has been. His thing is Iran. His thing is protecting the people of Israel. His thing is whatever his opinions are on the diplomatic issue, which we've been trying to figure out for 20 years. And his thing is about the economy, whereas he has his point of view on how the economy should be run. So if he's not going to be the leader that connects Israel to the diaspora better, well, who's it going to be? Well, it should be the leader of the Jewish world, right? Who is the leader of the Jewish world? The answer is Natan Sharansky, the chairman of the Jewish Agency. The Jewish Agency is the body that represents the diaspora Jewry here in Israel. It's a quasi-governmental organization that funds the diaspora. And the chairman of the Jewish Agency is a symbol of the state. He is buried on Mount Herzl, along with prime ministers and presidents, automatically, no matter who they are. Right now, there's a plot reserved there, even for Avraham Burg, who was a chairman of the Jewish Agency, who later became very proudly anti-Zionist. And one would say an anti-Zionist does not belong on Mount Herzl to be buried there. But he gets the grave automatically because he was the chairman of the Jewish Agency. And so Sharansky's voice has been quite quiet. He didn't say anything about Chotovely, I don't think. And we're certainly not hearing him loud and clear as the dispute that has been going on. Sharansky is near the end of his tenure. He is a very special man who was a refusnik in the Soviet Union, who became a hero in fighting to get the Jews out of the Soviet Union against the terrible communists and everything who ran it. He was been worshipped by Jews around the world for many, many years. And then he came here and became a politician and has been the chairman of the Jewish Agency now for a long time. He himself said that he did not want to serve this long, that he's already served longer in the Jewish Agency than he did in Soviet Russia in a prison camp. But he accepted another year because a year ago, Netanyahu couldn't really come up with a candidate. So I reported exclusively in Monday's Jerusalem Post on who the candidates are to replace Sharansky. The organizations that represent American Jewry, the lay leadership of the Jewish Agency and the Jewish Federations of North America, proposed to Netanyahu a series of candidates who are acceptable to them and asked him, who is your candidate? The 6 candidates that they mentioned were the Energy Minister, Yuval Steinitz, the Opposition Leader, Isaac Herzog, the Member of Knesset, who is the head of the Caucus on U.S.-Israel Relations, Nachman Shai, the former UN Ambassador of Israel, Ron Prosor, the current Consul General in New York, Danny Dayan, and the person who, if Netanyahu could really decide on his own, he would give the job to, the current ambassador of Israel in Washington, Ron Dermer. Now, these are 6 very interesting people who all know a lot about Israel and the Jewish world. Each would provide their own different perspective. Steinitz is a very smart Israeli politician who was first at the left end of the political map, then the right. Steinitz has got an impression from Netanyahu that he's definitely getting the job, to the point that he's even really stopped working on getting reelected to the Knesset. He stopped going to Likud events. So we'll see if that confidence bears fruit. I don't know. A couple of his former aides faced a criminal investigation, and Netanyahu might, when a decision has to be made in February, that's going to be around the same time as the police are supposed to be recommending charges against Netanyahu, he might want to distance himself from anything criminal at all. And even though no one's suggesting that Steinitz himself is anything but clean, still, his advisors who worked right under him presents an aura of negativity that Netanyahu might try to avoid. Isaac Herzog, it's no surprise that American Jews would like him to be the person in charge of them, but he's not going to be. He wants to be prime minister one day. He hasn't given up that hope, and he says he's going to run for re-election to the Knesset. Nachman Shai is a brilliant member of Knesset, a really nice guy who has spent decades in roles in which he received a great understanding of American Jewry. He was the chairman of the Jewish Federations of North America here in Israel, and he's done a lot to build U.S.-Israel relations, but he's not in the Likud, and Netanyahu will not pick someone who's not in Likud. Ron Prosor was a brilliant ambassador in London at the UN, but we've kind of forgotten about him. He's a professor now in Herzliya. He's going to have to be more profiled if he's going to get a job like that. Then there is Danny Dayan, who was the most surprising candidate to be on the list. After all, why would American Jews want a right-wing settler? Am I allowed to use that word? I'm sorry. Resident of Samaria. He was the head of the Yesha Council, the Council of Jewish Communities in Judea, Samaria, and the former Gaza Strip. So he, though, has impressed American Jewry for being an effective advocate for them. Ron Dermer has really focused his tenure in Washington on building relations with the Republican leadership, lately also the Democratic leadership a little bit. American Jewry, he has been criticized for not reaching out enough to liberal elements, but he certainly understands them, and he could make a wonderful Jewish agency head as well. He's an Oxford-educated, very brilliant man, and he's very close to Netanyahu, more than anyone, even Steinitz. And that is something that could help the Jewish world a lot, because if he's their man in advocating for them, then it should be the person closest to the prime minister who can be most effective in helping them out. Now, there has been controversy that there's something that all 6 of these people have in common, which is that none of them are women. I have to admit, I didn't notice at first. I wrote my article, and I put it on Facebook and Twitter first thing in the morning, like we're supposed to do at the Jerusalem Post nowadays. And the first reaction was, what? None of them are women? I thought, I guess, okay, fine, none of them are women. And then people kept on saying, wait, none of them are women. The former ambassador of the United States to Israel, that's the first thing he noticed about it. Members of Knesset, reporters from other newspapers, the political correspondent for Haaretz, the first thing he noticed he used it, I think, why are none of them, what's wrong with them? They can't come up with a woman. Einat Wilf, former member of Knesset, got very upset. And you know what? None of them are Ethiopian either. None of them are... there's a lot of things that they're not. They're all, I believe, Ashkenazi, if I'm not mistaken. None of them are Russian immigrants. And I spoke about that to Avigdor Lieberman, who said, you know what? The outgoing chairman of the Jewish Agency is Natan Sharansky from Russia. The Knesset speaker is Yuli Edelstein. Lieberman, who's the defense minister, said, I speak with a Russian accent, so I don't think we can really be complaining about being discriminated against. And if the next Jewish Agency chairman does not speak Russian, that's not the worst thing in the world. And which was a nice answer. That even though, let's face it, the chairman of the Jewish Agency does not deal with gender issues, the chairman of the Jewish Agency does deal with Russian immigration. I think it's interesting that women kind of freaked out. Why is there not a woman? Legitimately pointing that out, and that's perfectly fine. I think it's interesting that Avigdor Lieberman did not complain that there is no Russian speaker among those 6 candidates. And I think it's going to be very interesting because all of these candidates would be very good. Maybe Netanyahu will come out from left field with a different candidate. We'll find out soon. Whoever the candidate is going to be brought up in February to a vote among the Jewish Agency Board of Governors, and then brought to be sworn in August by the Jewish Agency Assembly of Jews from around the world. Now, that new chairman of the Jewish Agency is going to have to work on repairing that relationship between Israel and diaspora Jewry. I don't think politicians in parties can do it as well because of their bias. Avi Gabay, the new leader of the Labour Party, told me last week he's going on Monday night to the United States to meet American Jewish leaders there. And he says, I'm the man who can heal the rift between Israel and American Jewry. And maybe he has those skills. I don't know. But it would be nicer if it was done by a chairman of the Jewish Agency who can be like a state kind of figure who would be above politics, can really focus on Israel and the diaspora. And even though it might be appointed by a Likud prime minister, hopefully Netanyahu will make a decision based on professional considerations and find someone who can heal this rift between the people of Israel and the Jews around the world who love each other so much, have so much in common, and have been bickering about things that are certainly important to them, but it would be nice to get along better. So, plenty of fun and excitement inside Israel today and between Israel and the Jewish world. Thank you for being a part of our show, and shalom from Jerusalem.
Who are we as a people? Who are we as a nation? What does it mean to be a Jew in the land of Israel, as a Jew in Judea? What is our message to the world? We're finally back in our land, and we get to ask these questions.
Ezrat Hashem, we're going to make Judea and Samaria an issue for the entire world, to know that the Jews have a place in the world.
Israel Inspired with Ari Abramowitz and Jeremy Gimpel on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com.